Swedish winters can be brutal, but the cold time of the year is also a brewer's playground if you know what you're doing. One time I decided to cold crash outdoors and the weather turned on me. It hit minus 14 degrees Celsius and my brew bucket totally froze solid. Let's kick it. I'm Dr. Hans, this is Dr. Hans Brewery, my channel about beer and homebrewing. This is my friend Chewy. Temperature in brewing really matters and winter comes with its challenges but also its opportunities. This is a malty all grain lager which I brew with my own hops. I'll link down below to the recipe and grain to glass video even. But that was for the Walt beer version, wasn't it? All videos down below, editing doctor will fix it. So grab yourself a beer and let's dive in. Cheers. If you're new here to my channel, I brew outdoors and that's because I don't have a lot of space indoors and I like brewing outside. That means that in the winter time I do no chill, which is a great alternative and it's awesome in winter time where you don't want to have a lot of hoses and stuff laying around your yard and yeah, splashing water. There are of course things you have to consider when you're doing no-chill brewing, and I have a video that will take you from hero to zero in no time regarding no-chill brewing.
Scene 1, apple, take 1.
The cold time of year when fermented lagers can seem like a dream time, but we have to look about like the fluctuation of temperatures. Here in Sweden it can fluctuate a lot outdoors and that will even affect my indoor temperature here in the shed. Just this week we have minus 13 degrees Celsius and looking at getting like 5 degrees Celsius plus during the week. Just alone that's a fluctuation in 18 degrees Celsius. And sometimes during winter, even here at the Stockholm area, we could have like a 30 degree span from 20 minus degrees Celsius up to 10 degrees Celsius in a week. So if you don't have a fermentation fridge and think wintertime is really good for lagers, yes, you're right, but try to manage your temperature because temperature in fermentation really matters. And I talked about this in just an earlier video, but I got a question from Steve Leib, a proud member of the Dr. Hans Brew crew over at Patreon, about ramping temperature during brewing. One thing I didn't talk about in that video is that you don't really want your fermentation temperature to drop during fermentation. So if you're in an environment that fluctuates a lot in temperature, like my brewing shed here, that can be a really bad idea. It means that yeast can stall, drop out, leaving you with like an unfermented, not maybe unfermented, but less fermented wort, sweet beer, and also you could end up with off flavors like Diacetyl, for example. But did you know that Diacetyl is not always an off flavor? I have a full video about Diacetyl, you can go and check that. Link down below. Everything linked as usual. So even if you don't have a fancy fridge, you should get some sort of temperature control. You could like use a heat belt or heating mat. This one is for plant. There are also those for like terrariums and some sort of temperature control. I think I had one here. Some sort of temperature control. I have one here also, you can't see that. And also try to insulate your brewing vessel, if that's with a brewing jacket, which you hardly can see here, or if you're building a fort with your mom's couch cushions, or like this sort of material which you would put under your wife's knees. Be spontaneous, use what you have, but definitely get some sort of heat control or get a dedicated fridge with a temperature controller, some sort of heat source in there. Really like try to nail your fermentation temperature. In the same video I also answered the question, does gear really matter? And yes, in this case it does, but when not overspending you can get temperature control. Cold crash outdoors is a good idea, but keep control of your weather. My beer totally froze. It completely froze. And I do unfortunately have a video on that. And the fun thing with that beer is that it was a Kvike beer, so I fermented it super hot and then cold crash. But yeah, link down below. The editing doctor will sort it. Everything. When you have your couch cushion fort set up, your heater and temperature control ready, it's time to get into a really good morning routine. start each morning checking on your fermentation. You pitch the yeast on brew day. So take a few minutes each morning and go down to your couch, cushion, fermentation fort or fermentation fridge or whatever you built. So first 2 mornings you want to see, have the fermentation kicked off. And like having this morning routine to follow up when you brew is a really good way to start to manage fermentation, and also a really healthy way to start your morning to have a good morning routine. And I have been starting my stressful days of brewing, making videos, working with Magic Mind, which is supposed to give you reduced stress, focus and clarity, steady calm energy, and build up over time. And for me, I'm a routine person, so having something to look forward to each morning has been really great. And if you, unlike Chewy, has a problem with sleeping, Magic Mind also have their sleep elixir as a part of the all-day bundle, which I'm curious to give a go because it's a natural sleeping aid without melatonin. Sounds interesting, but it's not available here just yet, only US. I have a link and discount code down below which gives you a 45% discount of the all-day bundle, and maybe the good doctor could put up a fancy QR code you can scan. I did their 7-day challenge, and I will link down below to that video where I also go through 7 questions about brewing, and one was from Patreon Steve Lipe about the ramping. Really interesting question. So each morning, come down to the brew shed, have your Magic Mind. Cheers. It tastes really nice actually. Check if fermentation have kicked in to start with. If that's watching the airlock, maybe you're fermenting under pressure. You see if you have a build up of pressure here. Maybe you have a fancy spinning valve like mine with a thermometer you can read. And following that advice from other video, after a couple of days of fermentation, active fermentation, can go and check that full video there. I'm not going to go through the same here in this video. You can start to ramp up the temperature. But we can rush through the topic quickly. The key is to hold the temperature steady for the first time during fermentation. That depends on the temperature fermenting in. I did go more in depth in the first video linked down below. After that, you would like to ramp up the temperature. That will speed up fermentation time. It will also help out the yeast. Yeast loves heat, but maybe you don't like the flavors, and that's why we're controlling the temperature, like sometimes holding it back and sometimes pushing it. But most of the esters are produced in the first time at fermentation, when the yeast multiplies. After that, the yeast starts consuming the sugars, turning that into alcohol and CO2 and other compounds. And you can help the yeast by ramping up the temperature to work faster and also to consume some of those compounds that could be considered as off flavors. But what you don't want to do is to lower the fermentation, and that's why it's really good to get into some sort of temperature control. I did a video much earlier about my no fridge method. You don't need a fridge, and it's kind of what we're talking about here with the couch, cushion, fort or brewing jacket. You will need heat, and you will need a temperature control, and you need to pick your yeast according to the environment temperature, to at least the hottest temperature in the environment. So winter time can be a really good time for brewing. Cold crash outdoors if you don't mess it up like I did. You can get into lager fermentation without a fridge, or cool down your no-chill beer a lot quicker if you take control over the temperature and do not let temperature take control over you. Thank you Magic Mind for sponsoring the video. Give it a go, link down below, and check out code and everything. And if you haven't watched my 7-day challenge with Magic Mind, 7 of your questions, and one of the key questions was why you should not waste your starter, why don't you go and check out that video. Chewy, do you have anything to add? Oh, cheers.
That's all, beer bitches.